This is the members of the officers' training course held at Halton in 1939. Halton was a mansion built by Rothschild, a very palatial place in beautiful gardens, and one lived in luxury there.
Why did you join up?
I joined up early in 37 or 8 because there was obviously a war coming, and best to be in there. You get in with the commission and everything. So I joined in and started off flying, and then was taken off flying after a test in which it seems I nearly hit a tree coming into land.
Hansel clumsiness.
And after that, I was on this course in 39, and that was that.
Where were you before you joined up?
Before I joined up, I was at Chromex in the research laboratories on development on the special process I had there.
My father kept his old flying helmet. I used to play with it as a boy up in our attic. He always regretted failing that flying test, that he wasn't one of the few that saved this country, even though it probably saved his life because their life expectancy was in weeks, not months. It's also quite surprising that he failed, as he was very well coordinated and good with his hands. And it took some 60 years before this mystery was solved, because when he was living in Cirencester, the lady who lived down below had been a poster girl for the RAF, the Women's Royal Air Force. And one day she simply asked Dad, when you were coming in on that test, did the instructor put his clipboard in front of your eyes so you couldn't see what you were doing? Yes. That's why he nearly hit that tree. And this is how they kept the brighter ones away from flying, because they were needed for the logistics. They needed to keep the planes in the air for the aces to fly. So my father did play his part in winning that war. He kept the RAF flying.
Here, in some place unknown, I was smoking a pipe, which this was taken at some early stage in the RAF. I'm not quite certain where, except that the man on the right, somebody Davis.
So you were probably training, were you?
Yes, it was probably in 1939 somewhere.
And you all had drinks?
Well, it looks like it. This shows Alan in his paratroop uniform. He became a paratrooper in 1917, rather underage. His first encounter with the Germans was on an expedition to North Africa, where he was captured after his first fall. He spent the rest of his time in prisoner of war camps.
Where were the prisoner of war camps?
First of all in Italy, and then in Austria, and then in Germany. He was enlarged in each of these for a certain amount of time.
Alan had very acute hearing, and the prisoners of war with him used to ask him to let them know when he first heard the drone of the British bombers coming along. This was a cue for them to know that in 5 minutes they'd be overhead and that the Germans were preoccupied and they could start digging to escape.
When he was on the run from the prison camps, he was extremely hungry, and he used to eat parsnips and turnips raw from the fields. In later life, he would never eat parsnips and turnips.
This was taken at Hayward when I was there before going to Quedgeley. The other people at the table there are a man and his wife who were also billeted, but I can't remember what their names were. And this must have been a couple of months before, or more, 3 months before I went overseas.
Did you have to cook your own food, or was it served?
No, everything was done. Okay. This was taken whilst I was stationed in Quedgeley before going overseas. The other people in the...
Just you?
I was billeted on a farm near Hurstfield.
How long have you been smoking a pipe?
Oh, I don't know, years. As far as I think.
Right.
It shows the other people who were living on the farm, a family called Clark, the son and daughter are there. He was a very nice type. He was a barrister, quite an important one, I think. We used to play duets.
Was it his house?
No, it was a farm, built on a farm. We played duets, and we even played once or twice in the village hall for hops that they had.
So were you doing training then, or were you doing work?
I was doing work. I was doing work.
What was the work?
I was having to organise something which would, so that a unit could move down from Hayward in about 2 or 3 months' time. It involved quite a lot of working out and organisation.
Did it go well?
Yes, it went very well. Then I went overseas after that.
To do the same sort of thing?
Yes, I was posted overseas to do the same sort of thing in the Middle East with a squadron leader posting, which was an important part as far as I was concerned. But we took so long getting to the Middle East that they'd filled the post with somebody else, the people in Cairo.
My father's overseas posting meant that he had to get to Cairo to pick up his squadron leader's post and then move on to Iraq, where the RAF was trying to keep the Germans away from the oil fields. You can see from the map that in 1941 the boats went round the Cape of Good Hope. They went in convoys, the Winston Specials or WS convoys, and I suspect that my father was on convoy WS-14, which eventually split into 3, and he was then in WS-14A. As they left Durban, the boat Thysville struggled on the first night out. It was chased by U-boats and dysentery broke out on board. And my father says that as well as bodies going overboard, he washed himself in potassium permanganate, which he knew had antiseptic qualities, and the Thysville did eventually arrive in Aden in due course. All this meant that my father turned up in Cairo not just late, but purple from the potassium permanganate. So no wonder he didn't get his commission straight away.
This photograph was taken in Aden on the way back from Durban to Egypt. This place had a very strong wire netting all around it, the swimming pool, and they had sharks, the largest man-eating sharks in the world. That's the story. The other side of the wire netting.
Didn't you go rowing on the Suez Canal?
Oh, that was not here. That was
Well, but what happened there?
rowing. We didn't go rowing. We went sailing, little boats. This is a group of officers at Havanir. I don't know much about most of them, but there were several old Bedfordians there. I think there were 5 altogether. I came across them one evening playing rugger when the temperature was about 120.
What rank were you?
This is a part of that larger group. I can't see what rank I was on there.
What was your job out there?
Was to get this unit, well, I thought I hadn't got much of a job because having not got to the place in time for my what I was intended for,
So what did you spend your time doing?
I was having to organise a system that they had for ordering spares and aircraft and so on, and then keeping these in the air.
So how many men did you have working for you?
Well, in the actual office, I had about men, officers about 4 men. They're all men.
And did you
about 50?
And did you have to get parts from planes that had been shot down, or were they all new parts?
No. Put down contracts with the makers. You had some idea of how many aircraft were being made and the time scale, so you could keep pay it with spares.
So your job was to keep the planes in the air?
Yes.
What about where you were?
This was in Havanir, after I'd got into the main building, which from my tent. And here the conditions were quite good. We had electric lights and all that sort of thing. And
weren't the Iraqis at war with us by this stage?
They had already made war about a couple of months earlier.
Why have they done that?
Well, because they want to get rid of us.
Did that mean that the local Iraqis were all hostile?
No, I didn't see much of them. But, the Germans took part in it. They sent a few Heikels over to do a bit of bombing. And
How often did you see jet bombers?
I didn't see them much. There was a hole in my office where I had there. A large part of that had been destroyed. This group was taken in Havanir, where we had several tennis courts at the mess. Up on the left of the picture is Freddie Mott. The others I can't remember really. They were
Freddie Mott was a good friend of yours?
yes, I do remember. I take it this is after I've been promoted to squadron leader. Originally, I had been I worked with the MAP people, Beaverbrook boys, particularly with KJ Deere, who was one time one of the most active of the people who he enrolled. And I taught him, as he said, all he knew about it, and he got me this posting, this squadron leader posting, because he became the deputy director general of aircraft production. But anyway, it all went very well.
How old were you here?
Yeah, well, 42. I was born in 1917.
25.
Yeah. This is a standing up one, following the portrait in the last slide, taken at Havanir.
Did all the men have to salute you now you were a squadron leader?
All men saluted you when you were a pilot officer. The men, the non-commissioned, but it was when you were a squadron leader, you could salute from below squadron leader.
Did you go to the senior mess for your food?
There wasn't any junior or senior mess, you went to the same mess. In might be a small building, and one mess I was in before I went overseas, gradually. Here we had the German ambassador, Ribbentrop, at dinner. He was visiting, he was shown around. More was declared a fortnight later.
Do you think he was spying?
Trevor was on HMS Bulldog, a destroyer escorting a convoy to Murmansk in 1942. They went via Iceland to avoid the U-boats.
Mm.
And when they got near to Murmansk, the Edinburgh was attacked and subsequently sunk. And as the Russians refused to give them any food and all the supplies had been on board the Edinburgh, they were extremely hungry on the way back. Trevor went on one Russian convoy. I think it was PQ-11. It was the convoy after one which had been almost wiped out, so it wasn't very pleasant to go on. In 1942 to Murmansk, escorting the convoy which was taking the supplies to Russia.
And didn't the Russians honour them many years later?
Yes, he has a medal, which was presented by the Russians many years after the war.
This shows Trevor, and he looks as if he's standing on the top platform of a high dive.
This is Trevor diving. He had a very good body image, as you can see, with his toes pointed, knees straight, legs together.
Oh.
This is Trevor after getting his commission, probably training up in Scotland for the D-Day landings.
This shows Bob Armstrong and Eileen Armstrong enjoying a pub lunch.
We think they got married sometime during the war.
This shows Eileen and Bob together with Skipper in the near foreground.
My father finished the war back in Egypt, and I think, but I'm not sure, that he'd been promoted to wing commander, but once again he arrived too late to pick up the posting. I do know, however, that he liberated a magnificent German BMW motorbike, and I'd like to think that he got at least part of the way home back to Blighty on this motorbike, but I'm not at all sure that's the case. Shame he didn't keep it though.